Samuel Hart had lived on his ranch for longer than he could remember. The land stretched wide and endless under the bright New Mexico sun, with dry grass rippling in the wind and rugged mountains standing like silent guardians in the distance. Samuel had inherited the ranch from his father, and after losing his wife and children to illness decades ago, he had chosen a life of solitude. He didn't mind being alone. The quiet of the land was his comfort, and the rhythm of ranch life gave him purpose. Every day was a cycle of tending the cattle, fixing fences, and checking the irrigation channels, a life full of work but void of companionship. Villagers often said that Samuel had the kind of face that told stories, deep lines, etched by years of sun, wind, and sorrow. His eyes were sharp and observant, scanning the horizon constantly, as if expecting something beyond the ordinary. Children would sometimes hide behind their mothers when he walked through the village, intimidated by his stern appearance. Yet, those who knew him understood he had a gentle heart beneath the weathered exterior. He was fair, honest, and dependable. The kind of man people could rely on, even if he never sought their company. Despite his self-imposed isolation, Samuel's life was orderly and fulfilling in its own way. He rose with the sun, brewed a pot of strong coffee, and stepped out to the barn to check on the cows. Each morning, he would talk to the animals quietly, counting them, feeding them, and making sure they were healthy. He took pride in his land and in maintaining it well. Sometimes, he would sit by the old oak tree near the creek and read letters he had kept for years. Memories of a family lost too soon. The ranch was his home, his world, and his solace. One crisp morning, Samuel noticed something unusual. As he walked along the edge of the property, he saw fresh footprints in the dirt. They were not the kind left by his own boots or by any animals. Curious, he followed them, leading toward the small clearing near the creek. There, standing side by side in a careful line, were 6 young women. They looked different from anyone he had met, dressed simply but neatly, with bright eyes and calm expressions. Samuel stopped in his tracks, unsure what to say. The women bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he recognized from the old stories his grandmother had told him about native traditions. One of them, slightly older than the others and clearly the leader, stepped forward. "Good morning, sir," she said politely. "We have come to speak with you. We are Apache, and we have heard of your honesty and your strength. We have a request, and we hope you will hear us kindly." Samuel's eyebrows rose in surprise. "A request?" he asked slowly. "From 6 young women at once?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "We wish to ask if you would consider taking us as your wives, all 6 of us." The words hit Samuel like a sudden storm. He opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for a response. He had never imagined anything like this would happen in his quiet, solitary life. His first instinct was to refuse politely, to send them back to their homes. But there was something in their eyes, a mix of courage, hope, and respect, that made him pause. 6? He finally said, shaking his head slightly. I am old. I have lived alone for so many years. Why would you choose me?" The leader of the group smiled softly. "We know your life has been quiet and hard, sir. We have also known struggle. And our elders taught us that a man of integrity and strength can provide safety, knowledge, and guidance. We do not wish to force you. We only hope that you will consider this carefully. Our families agreed we could ask for someone who deserves our trust and respect, and they said, your name came with honor." Samuel's heart softened. The words were simple, yet they carried weight. He remembered the loneliness he had buried for so long, the empty nights filled with only the sound of wind and cattle. And now, here were 6 women, brave enough to stand before him, asking for a life together. It was overwhelming, almost unreal. He looked at each of them, noting their quiet determination. There was Maria, with her gentle smile and steady hands, Lena, whose laughter seemed to brighten the clearing. Rosa, who carried herself with dignity. Anna, shy but observing every detail. Clara, curious and full of energy. And Sophia, the youngest, who looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. Each one had a story, a dream, and a longing for stability that mirrored his own unspoken desires. I don't know what to say, Samuel admitted. This is unusual, to say the least. I am not a young man. I do not know if I am the right choice for you, or if I can care for 6 at once. The women nodded, accepting his hesitation. We understand, sir, the leader said. We only ask for the chance to live here, to learn about you and your life. If it does not work, we will leave. But if it does, we hope we can build a life together, respectful, supportive, and united. Samuel felt a warmth he had not known for years. It was not love at first sight, he was too practical for that. But it was something he had longed for without realizing it. He had spent decades in solitude, thinking the land and animals were enough. Yet now, the possibility of companionship, of a family, flickered like a small fire in his chest. Very well, he said finally. You may stay, for a time. But understand, this life here is not easy. The work is hard, the days are long, and I make no promises about the future. If you wish to stay, you must help with the ranch, respect the land, and respect me. Only then can we see if this arrangement can work. The women's faces lit up with relief and gratitude. Thank you, sir, said the leader. We will do our best. We only wish to honor your home and your life. That afternoon, Samuel showed them the small cabins he had built near the edge of the property. Each cabin was simple but comfortable, with enough room for them to live without interfering with the ranch's daily work. The women settled in, unpacking their few belongings and preparing to learn the rhythm of ranch life. Over the next few days, Samuel observed them closely. They were hardworking, careful, and willing to learn. Maria quickly adapted to cooking for the ranch. Lena helped with the horses, and Rosa organized the chores to keep everything running smoothly. Anna studied the irrigation channels and offered small suggestions, while Clara joined Samuel in repairing fences and learning to handle the tools. Sophia quietly assisted wherever she was needed, learning with wide-eyed curiosity. Samuel began to notice small changes in himself. He smiled more often, laughed quietly at the women's jokes, and felt a sense of purpose beyond the work he had always done alone. The ranch, once silent and still, now held the sounds of life: footsteps on the wooden floors, laughter echoing in the cabins, and voices calling across the fields. Evenings became moments of quiet togetherness. They shared meals, listened to Samuel's stories of the past, and sometimes sang songs from their own Apache heritage. Samuel found joy in teaching them about the ranch, the care of the cattle, the secrets of the land, and the wisdom he had learned over a lifetime. In return, they taught him small things too, from the preparation of traditional meals to simple crafts and games. Yet Samuel remained cautious. He knew the arrangement was unconventional, and he worried about the long-term future. Could 6 women truly live harmoniously with one man? Could he meet their needs and keep his own life in order? He did not know. But for the first time in years, he felt hope. Hope that life could be richer, warmer, and fuller than he had ever imagined. Days passed, and the women became more comfortable with the ranch and with Samuel. They respected his rules and work ethic, and Samuel began to respect their strength and courage. He realized that he had been lonely not just for companionship, but for connection, for people who could share life's burdens and joys. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Samuel stood on the porch of his house and looked out over the ranch. The cabins glowed softly in the twilight, smoke rising from cooking fires, and laughter carried on the wind. For the first time in decades, he felt a sense of peace, not the quiet peace of solitude, but the warm, lively peace of a family taking shape. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, full of adjustments and compromises. Yet, as he watched the 6 women working together, supporting each other, and integrating into the ranch life, he allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Perhaps life had more to offer him than he had ever believed possible. Perhaps the years of loneliness were ending, replaced by a future he had never dared to dream. Samuel had agreed to let them stay for a trial. But already, in his heart, he felt that this trial could turn into a lifetime of companionship. The ranch, once a symbol of solitude, was beginning to transform into a home filled with hope, laughter, and the promise of a new family. And so, as the stars appeared one by one in the clear desert sky, Samuel knew that his quiet, solitary life was about to change forever. The women's courage had opened a door he thought had long been closed, and he was ready, cautiously but sincerely, to step through it. The days at the ranch quickly became busier, fuller, and livelier than Samuel Hart had ever imagined. The 6 women had settled into their cabins, and slowly, routines began to form. Samuel watched them closely, noticing how each had her own personality and strengths. Maria was calm and steady, the one who seemed to understand the rhythm of the ranch immediately. Lena was lively and curious, always asking questions about the land or the animals. Rosa had a quiet dignity, and Samuel found himself listening to her thoughts with unexpected respect. Anna was shy but clever, often surprising him with small, practical ideas. Clara was full of energy and enthusiasm, always ready to take on a challenge. And Sophia, the youngest, observed everything quietly, learning quickly and asking questions at the right moments. Samuel realized that, despite the differences between them, the women had begun to cooperate naturally. They divided chores, helped each other with cooking and cleaning, and even started teaching one another some of their own skills. Samuel, who had lived alone for decades, found himself relying on them in small ways, letting them prepare meals, manage supplies, and help with the animals. And in return, he taught them everything he knew about ranch life. Some mornings, he would walk with them to the pastures, explaining how to check the health of the cattle, how to identify sick animals, and how to repair fences before storms came. He showed them how to track weather patterns, read the soil, and understand the land in a way only someone who had lived on it for years could know. The women listened intently, impressed by the depth of his knowledge, and Samuel, in turn, was surprised by how quickly they learned and adapted. Life was not without challenges. Early on, a small disagreement arose between Lena and Clara over the daily chores. Lena wanted to change the order of tasks, believing it would save time, while Clara preferred to follow Samuel's long-established routine. Samuel stepped in calmly, listening to both sides, and suggested a compromise. The women were grateful for his fair approach, and the disagreement ended in laughter rather than frustration. It was one of the first lessons Samuel realized. Living together meant compromise, patience, and understanding. Despite the work and occasional disagreements, moments of joy began to fill the ranch. In the evenings, after the cattle were fed and chores done, they would gather near the main house to share meals. Sometimes, Samuel would tell stories from his past about his childhood, his father's wisdom, and memories of his family. The women would listen attentively, asking questions, laughing at the funny moments, and occasionally sharing their own stories from the reservation. One evening, Samuel watched as Sophia tried to teach Clara a traditional song from her Apache heritage. At first, Clara stumbled over the words, but soon, all 6 women were singing together, their voices harmonizing with the gentle rustle of the wind through the fields. Samuel felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in decades. The ranch was no longer silent. It was alive with music, laughter, and conversation, and he was at the center of it all. As weeks passed, the women became more than helpers. They became companions, friends, and, slowly, a family. Samuel noticed small changes in himself too. He smiled more easily, laughed at the women's playful teasing, and felt a sense of purpose that went beyond tending the land. He had spent decades caring only for the animals and the ranch, but now he found joy in helping 6 young women grow, learn, and adapt to this new life. The village, however, was less understanding. Word of the unusual arrangement had spread, and some neighbors whispered about the 6 women living with one man. A few came by to voice their concerns, worried about the unconventional nature of Samuel's household. He listened patiently, explaining that the women were happy, hard-working, and respectful. "We are building a life together," he said quietly, "based on respect, trust, and cooperation. Nothing more, nothing less." Slowly, even the villagers who had been skeptical began to respect the household. They saw how well the women worked, how the ranch flourished under their combined effort, and how Samuel treated them with fairness and dignity. The gossip faded, replaced by curiosity, admiration, and eventually, quiet acceptance. Life on the ranch was not just about work, it was about learning, growing, and understanding each other. Samuel discovered that each woman brought something unique to the family. Maria taught him new ways to cook with the ingredients they had on the ranch. Lena's energy inspired Samuel to try small changes in ranch management. Rosa offered thoughtful advice that helped him make better decisions. Anna's clever ideas often saved time and effort, while Clara's determination encouraged him to tackle tasks he had long postponed. Sophia's innocence and curiosity reminded him of the wonder in simple things, from sunrise to the sound of a flowing stream. The women also formed deep bonds with each other. They supported one another through challenges, celebrated small victories, and shared in the daily joys of ranch life. When one was tired or overwhelmed, the others would step in to help. This sense of cooperation created harmony on the ranch, even in the most demanding days. Samuel watched this with quiet satisfaction, realizing that family was not only about blood, but also about care, respect, and shared effort. One spring, the ranch faced a real test. Heavy rains threatened the irrigation channels, and Samuel realized that without careful management, the fields could flood, and the cattle could be at risk. Together, he and the women worked long hours, reinforcing the channels, moving animals to safer ground, and ensuring the land was protected. The work was exhausting, but when it was done, they stood together, muddy and tired, yet proud. Samuel looked at them and felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in decades, he felt that he was truly part of a family that cared for each other and for the land. In quieter moments, Samuel reflected on the changes in his life. The ranch, once a symbol of his solitude, had transformed into a home filled with energy, laughter, and hope. He realized that his life had not ended with loss and loneliness. Instead, it had been given a second chance. The 6 women, brave and determined, had opened a door he never thought he could walk through again. Evenings often became times of shared stories and lessons. Samuel taught the women to read the stars, explaining how they could tell the seasons and predict weather. He showed them the best times to plant, harvest, and care for the animals. The women, in turn, shared their culture with him, teaching traditional songs, dances, and practices. Samuel discovered that learning and teaching were not just practical but also a way to strengthen bonds and build understanding. The sense of community deepened when they celebrated their first holiday together. Samuel prepared the main dishes, while the women contributed side dishes, desserts, and decorations. They sang songs, shared stories, and laughed late into the night. Samuel had never experienced such warmth and connection. The ranch was no longer just a place to work, it was a home, a family, and a source of joy. As the months passed, Samuel grew more confident in his role. He realized that caring for 6 women, teaching them, and learning from them was not as overwhelming as he had feared. It was fulfilling. It brought purpose, happiness, and companionship into his life in ways he had never imagined possible. He felt younger in spirit, energized by the laughter and activity that now filled the ranch. The women, too, found happiness and security. They respected Samuel, admired his strength, and cherished his guidance. They supported each other, sharing chores and responsibilities, and learned to live together harmoniously. In the process, they discovered that family was more than tradition. It was cooperation, respect, and love. By the end of the year, the ranch had changed completely. What had once been quiet and empty now buzzed with activity, laughter, and life. The animals were healthier, the fields were thriving, and Samuel's heart was full. He had spent decades alone, thinking that solitude was all life had left him. Yet now, surrounded by 6 strong, kind, and courageous women, he realized that life had given him a gift far beyond what he had imagined. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Samuel stood on the porch of his house and watched the women laughing together in the yard. The air was filled with the smell of fresh bread, horses in the pasture, and the gentle hum of a thriving ranch. He smiled, a deep, contented smile, knowing that his days of loneliness had ended. Samuel Hart, the old rancher who had once lived only for the land, had found family, companionship, and a renewed sense of purpose. The 6 Apache women had entered his life with courage, patience, and respect. And together, they had created a home filled with love, laughter, and hope. The ranch was no longer just a place to live, it was a family, a community, and a testament to the idea that life, even in its later years, could surprise and transform a person in the most wonderful ways. The stars appeared one by one in the clear desert sky, and Samuel, standing quietly, felt peace. Not the quiet of solitude, but the warm, vibrant peace of belonging. His life had changed, and for the first time in decades, he was not only living, he was truly alive.